It's the I Can't Mom Today podcast with Heather, the new mom, and Vera, the seasoned mom. I Can't Mom Today.
Hey, this is Heather and Vera back again for another edition of I Can't Mom Today. I think this is our 7th episode.
Wow, has it been that far already?
I know, so crazy, right? It feels like just yesterday.
Can you imagine what it's going to be like when it's our 100th?
We're having cake.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, today we are talking about birth stories. And Vera, you're going to share yours first, right?
Sure. And I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. I'll start by saying my labor was 32 hours long.
Yeah.
I know. And I thought I did everything right while I was pregnant. Like I took all the birthing classes. I went to the gym. The poor manager of the gym, as my pregnancy got later and later, would be like, "What are you doing here? I'm afraid the baby's going to come out while you're here." So I worked out. I ate right. I actually craved, I love spinach to begin with, but I craved spinach. So I ate the crap load out of spinach and all kinds of healthy food, and just thought, I'm going to rock this. I'm going to rock this labor, man. He's going to come flying out of my hoo-ha, and it's going to be done in like 6 hours. And now 32 hours. So I'll start by saying, I was working in radio full time at the time, and the radio station was doing this promotion called Survivor Driver. And this was kind of when the TV show Survivor first started, I guess. It was around that time. So they thought it would be fun to give away a car and have people live in the car and have the listeners vote people out of the car. I was there. Luckily, Luke was late. He was a week late because that was the week of Survivor Driver. And I had to be in the studio to take people's phone calls to take their votes on voting people in or out of the car. So literally on the last day, I was officially a week late. And I took the last vote, and I was in the whole week. I'd been having Braxton Hicks. I've been having all these signs like, he's going to be coming. He's going to be coming. And my boss is like, please tell him to wait. Please tell him to wait. And so, you're so uncomfortable by the end that you're just like, oh, please, for the love of God, get this thing out of me. So I called my mom, who had already been staying here for 2 weeks, and she was running out of vacation time to stay down here and wait for him to come. I was like, Mom, we're going to walk. We're going to walk. We're going to get this baby out. So we walked. I swear we must have walked like 4 or 5 miles that day. Walked around Tom Brown Park, walked around Lake Ella, walked up and down my street. And my poor neighbors were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm just trying to get him out." So I would have a couple of contractions and nothing. Then went to the triage, called my girlfriend, Carrie, who was my labor coach, called her, and we all go to the hospital and get undressed, which is hard when you're having labor contractions and you're huge. And they say, "Oh, nope, you're not dilated enough. Go home." So in the car on the way home, I started having these terrible, terrible contractions, and they were just like, "Nope, they're too far apart and too inconsistent." Hours go by, keep having inconsistent contractions, go back. I can't remember if I went back to triage like 2 or 3 times. I think the second time I went, they took pity on me and let me keep the hospital gown on and walk around the hospital. But they said, "But you're still not ready to get admitted to a room, so you're just going to have to walk around the hospital." I was like, "Oh, this is lovely." So did that. And then finally they admitted me into a room. Well, come to find out that the reason I wasn't dilating is because years previous, I had a cone biopsy on my cervix because I had precancerous cervical cells. Well, my doctor knew all of that and had told me it shouldn't be a problem. Well, the quote unquote midwife, who was basically more, like an assistant who was there from my doctor's office, neglected to remember that or notice that in my chart. So I went through hours of pain only to find out that she had to basically stick her finger up into my cervix to pop it open because of the scar tissue. Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So at that point, we're about 17 hours in, I think. And she tried to do it, and I screamed bloody murder. And she was like, "I really think you need to do an epidural at this point, because there's no way I'm going to be able to get my finger in there and pop it open." And, because judging from how you just reacted when I tried, and I'm not going to be able to get you to lie still. I was like, so get the epidural, which by the way was right in the middle of my tramp stamp, which was perfect for the anesthesiologist. It was like X marks the spot. And had the epidural. And then after that, it was still another, you can do the math on it, but it was still like another half a day. Finally, my OBGYN shows up, who wasn't even really my OBGYN. He was the partner in the practice, because you don't always get the guy you have because they might not be on call. Well, this guy turns out he's Italian. So like Italian. So he speaks English, but he also speaks Italian. Well, one of my girlfriends, because at this point I have about half a dozen people in the labor and delivery room. It's like a party. And I have one girlfriend who shows up, I'm not naming any names, who shows up. And I think she was still drunk the first time she showed up. And she went home to take a shower and came back. And then she was hungover and lying on the floor. Waiting for Luke to come. So it was all mayhem. But one of my girlfriends, who also happened to mention to the doctor that she was an attorney, very handy dandy, said, "Oh, you're from Italy. We're in Italy, and I speak some Italian, and I've been to Italy, and blah, blah, blah." So she warms him up a little bit. And, and again, happens to mention that she's an attorney. So I'm like, this is good because I'm, a single woman.
Yeah.
People can make their judgments. And I'm like, I've got my, two of my best friends, one of whom's an attorney. The other one's my Lamaze coach and my mom, and then a couple other various and sundry hungover friends. And, so I'm no slouch, So finally he says, he's like, I don't know if we should do a C-section or not. And I was like, no. And at this point, I have a gas mask on my face.
Yeah.
I have wires coming out of my hoo-ha because Luke needed to have his, heart being monitored.
Yeah.
So there are wires coming out of me, and we've had to roll over because his heartbeat got a little weird, and just all that stuff, scary, and we're getting weaker and weaker, both of us, and have a temperature. But at this point, so the doctor's like, and I remember pulling the mask away from my face and going, "I don't want a C-section," and then putting it back, like Darth Vader. I don't want a C-section. Like that. And so he sat down in the chair next to my bed and just put his head in his hands. And I remember looking at him thinking, what is he doing? Like, what is he thinking about? What is going on?
Yeah, totally.
So eventually he got up and he looked at me and he said, "Okay, we're going to give this a try. And if he doesn't come fairly quickly, we're going to have to do an emergency C-section." And I was like, okay, thanks for letting me give it a try, because at this point, I've been training for this, man,
Yeah.
And then he got out one of these little things that I called it like a kiwi, because I guess it's green and it's a little circle. It's like the little suction cup thingy they put on the baby's head to try and help pull him out gently, rather than forceps. And he was like, "Okay, everybody's got to get out of here except for a couple of people." So I had my girlfriend, Carrie, my Lamaze coach, and my other girlfriend, Carrie, who was the attorney, my mom, and one other girlfriend. And I just remember pushing with every fiber of my being. And we were like, and we're counting and screaming and pushing. And like, it took probably about, I can't remember exactly, but I would say between 5 and 10 pushes, and he came out. But he was also sideways. He wasn't breech, but he was, instead of his facing down, he was facing sideways. So they had to figure out how they had to kind of turn him. So thank God I had that epidural. They had to kind of turn him so he was facing down. But even then, as he came out, he had his hand by his head, and then he extended his elbow. So everything down there was absolutely destroyed. It was demolished. Everything down there. And so the nurses looked at me and they go, "Girl, you have got some major blackmail for your son because he just destroyed everything." It's all.
Oh.
Yeah. So then the quote unquote midwife, swooped in to try and sew everything up down there. And the Italian doctor pushes her aside and says, "No, I must do this." And my mother said, I don't know if he felt like at this point, he had to take care of the artwork. And so he sewed everything up and got everything else back together again. Thank God. But yeah, so 32 hours later. And then, thank God Luke was okay. Although they were worried because I forgot what that term is where they poop in the womb.
It's meconium. I know that.
Yeah. So that had happened. So of course, then they're always worried about contamination. So they had to make sure he was all clean, and
they're worried that they're gonna breathe it in.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So there was that, but he came out and had this look. I'll never forget the look on his face. Like, how in the hell did I get here? Like, his eyes are wide open. It wasn't like his eyes were just totally wide open, just looking around like, holy shit. Where am I? So that was, and then of course the recovery, which we talked about, I think once before, the recovery the days after that, but that's not the birth story. We can always talk more about that another time.
Well, we only talked a little bit about the recovery. It was more like after, like when you got home. But
Yes.
what was it like at the hospital for you? Because I know we both have separate stories, but we were both in the hospital. We weren't in like a birthing center or anything like that. And so how was your experience? And we're in different cities. You're in a smaller city than I am.
Yeah. Well, I was not. Well, first of all, I didn't realize that you could tell them that they can take the baby at any point, like where you can say, I need to rest. Can you please take the baby? I didn't realize you could do that. So I had him in the room with me the whole time. But at the same time, I think even if I knew that I could do that, I wouldn't have, just because I was so protective of him. That, like even when I had to go to the bathroom, I'd roll the little bassinet over to the bathroom with me and then roll it back. And then of course, everything downstairs was so sore. Like I had a catheter, I think, for at least a day afterwards.
Really?
And they had to come check it a lot. I was on Tylenol codeine. I think even after I got home, they let me take some of that home with me because that's how badly it was just all tore up. I'm just glad I didn't get to see it.
Now they're like, you get some drugs and you get some drugs. I got Percocet. I was like, heck yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, Tylenol codeine, I think, was the worst thing that I had, but it did help.
Yeah.
But then, of course, every time you had to go to the bathroom, that irritates it kind of. So once they took the catheter out, then it was like, ugh. And I was like wearing ice underpants like constantly. Like,
yeah. Well, did they provide that at the hospital you were at?
Yeah, they did. And then when I got home, though, then I had to make it work. But they gave me like this, I never even knew what a sitz bath was. Did you do sitz bath?
I didn't. I bought the stuff to do it, but I didn't do it because I was too afraid that it would get infected.
Okay. See, I did do it, and they gave me the thing. And at first I was kind of weirded out, and I was a little worried about that too. But then you figure out how to make sure it like kind of flows, you do it right so it doesn't get infected or anything, and it was kind of refreshing. That and that
Wait,
spray
is that
they
the spray
give you.
bottle?
No, this was actually like it had like it was like a thing you put over your toilet. Yeah, and you sit over it, and then it has like a little hose, and you can.
I didn't have a hose. Mine was just like a bowl you basically sat in.
Okay,
but I was too afraid that I wouldn't get it clean enough or something would happen, and I was just like, no.
Oh yeah, no, but I'll tell you, I would do that, and then, make sure everything was dry, and then spray the Shine-Ola out of that stuff that numbs you. That they gave me some of.
They gave me like Tux pads, essentially.
No, they gave me a spray, so I would just spray, and I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, no,
So,
they might. I think they might. That might be an option, but not for me. They gave me some kind of gel, which was amazing. This like jelly stuff. I don't know what it was, but you put that on the Tux pad and then,
go to town.
Yeah. Adhere it, if you will, but you're not like taping it or anything. You just stick it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, that was tough. That was really, really tough. But I think that if he had not come out quite so violently, it might have been, the recovery might have been, I think mine was a particularly bad case is what I'm saying. Like it was.
Yeah. I don't think many people, what degree tearing did you get?
They didn't say, they just said everything, every layer from top to bottom.
So it's probably like 30 degree.
I have no idea. They didn't tell me that much. No,
I think it only goes 1 to 4, I believe. So 4 is probably the worst.
Yeah. But just like I said, they said that there are 2 layers and both layers were torn from top to bottom. Yeah. So again, thank goodness. I was so against having an epidural and freaked out about getting an epidural.
Yeah.
So thank goodness I had that blessed epidural.
Everything's fine though now, right?
Yeah. No, that Italian doctor did me right. I'm telling you what.
Nice.
My husband's happy about it.
Excellent.
So yeah, that and thank God Luke is okay, and because it was scary. Well, and then come to find out, my mother was telling a friend of hers who's a doctor the story, and about my doctor sitting down and putting his head in his hands and all this, and she was, we're all going, what is he doing? And the doctor said, oh, well, I'm sure he was thinking, because at that point, your daughter, meaning me, she's compromised. So she might not have been able to withstand a C-section. So that was probably running through his mind too. Like, I don't know if I just go ahead and try and take the baby out. The baby will probably make it, but I don't know if she will because 32 hours. Yeah, it's pretty scary. I'm glad I didn't know that at the time. But yeah, it's pretty scary. Looking back on it. So I'm grateful, so grateful that it all worked out. Thank goodness for modern medicine. Although my one complaint is that my doctor's office, that's why you go to one doctor. I'm no schlub. I have health insurance. I had one doctor I went to the whole time, and he knew about my cone biopsy. And so the fact that didn't get communicated until later on, I mean, literally half a day into it, really upset me. And I wrote that in my little thing before I left the hospital that I was PO'd about that. I mean, I could have died. Yeah. My baby could have died, like what the hell? And it's a simple thing. They had it in, it was no secret. So note to self, if you've had any kind of biopsies on your cervix, even if the doctor says, oh, it's okay, make sure when you go in there to say, hey, just so you know, I have scar tissue on my cervix. So if it's not dilating, that could be part of it. Because then think about all the contractions I was going through that I might have been able to avoid because here's my poor uterus going,
what is going on?
Yeah, exactly. And he's not, that's not, the cervix isn't cooperating.
Yeah, you actually gave me that insight. You were like, hey, make sure they know I didn't have a cone biopsy, but I had a colposcopy. And so immediately I was like, I've had a colposcopy. I did not want to, repeat everything that you had done. And I think that's kind of the message that we're getting across is that make sure that you are talking to your friends, talk to us. We are more than happy to help you out with whatever experience we've had. Obviously, we're not experts, but talk to your doctor and really be that voice because you make sure they're listening to you because there's a lot of doctors that don't listen to you.
Yeah. And too, I think that my doctor listened, but I kind of blame the midwife because that's the whole point. She's not the nurse at the hospital. She's from the practice that I've been going to for 9 months. And she should have been familiar with it. Like, okay, here we go. Well, let's see. It's Vera. So, oh yeah, she's, why wasn't she looking at that until later? So that really, you just, unfortunately, as with any health thing, really, you have to be your own advocate. And so even when you show up at the hospital and you think, oh, well, this is my doctor and my midwife and my whomever, you say, just so you guys know, I'm going on record. This is, what's going on with me. I'm not going to trust you to read my stuff.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think they're a little bit more thorough from, your day.
Well, yeah, it could be. I mean, truly, 15 years later, I would hope people have learned from their mistakes, but still, you never know. And two, I'll say, I think that if it were now, I think that 15 years ago, there was a little bit more of an attitude towards single women having babies.
Sure,
I think it's much more acceptable now than even just 15 years ago. Sure. So I think that some of in fact, the original nurse that I had when I first got in, she was older and I just felt like she treated me like I was a piece of poo and looked down her nose at me. But then I had another nurse who was so awesome and she was there for 8 hours of it. And then her shift ended and she actually came back when Luke was born because she wanted to see and check and make sure everything turned out okay, which was super sweet.
That's so sweet.
Her name is Laura. I'll never forget her. I don't know where she is, but Laura, shout out. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, one of our listeners shared their story on Facebook page. If you want to find us, you can find us on Facebook under I Can't Mom Today. But Terry had a baby several years ago, going on like 40 something years ago. We have women of all ages in our group, but she was a quiet person and she didn't speak up a lot. She was kind of like, reserved, and that was her personality. Right. So she went into labor, they gave the epidural, and she was having like a lot of pain, like headache pain. And she said it was like a freight train going through her head. And come to find out, like the nurse was like, oh my gosh, her pressure is going, sky high. And come to find out that the epidural was, the way it was administered wrong. And it was put in her bloodstream instead of tapping the nerve. Yeah. So she could have, like, both her and the baby's lives were in danger. And so they quickly got the baby out and, put her under, took the baby, but they both survived, thankfully. And granted, this was 40 something years ago. So I know that monitoring is a lot better, and I don't want to scare any moms because there's so many people that have such good experiences. But this is Terry's experience. And Terry, thank you for sharing that with us. It's a lot longer. If you want to read all the details, you can definitely go to our Facebook page and search birth, and you'll find Terry's explanation of what happened. But thankfully, her and her baby survived. And it's just something, goodness. She realized she needed to speak up and be a little bit noisier. So if you're having pains or you're
anything feels weird. Yeah. And because I'm kind of bad about that too. Again, it's like you're always learning to speak up and say something. And I'm not quite that reserved, but I'm usually, like, I was really taught to, respect authority and respect. And so you don't want to get in the way. You figure they know what they're doing. Well, ultimately they do, but you better than anybody else does. So
for sure. And like they always say, these doctors are there, like your pediatrician and your OB during pregnancy are going to be two of the doctors that you can call day in and day out, and they're going to be there to answer you. They have answering services. They have doctors on call for that reason, because it is an important time, and it's a new time. And I know I got frustrated with my doctor, and I loved her. Everyone in the doctor's office was great, but I just felt like every time I asked them, they're like, that's normal. That's normal. That's normal. I'm like, it can't be normal. It's not in the books.
I don't see it in the book. Yeah.
I would get frustrated, but I still would call because I'm like, hey, I'm just checking in again about this. I know I'm probably being crazy, or I'm, being a hypochondriac or whatever. And, they would be like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, they were never rude about it, for sure.
That's awesome.
They were always very kind and compassionate, I guess. But yeah, there were some times where I'm like, it can't be normal. But it was.
I'm weird, damn it.
Yeah. Well, that's about enough for today. We always like to keep these episodes really short so that you're able to listen to them in the car or, at the gym or wherever you like to listen to your podcast. And we don't want to take up too much of your day, but we will continue next week with my birth story.
The Heather and the bigger.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah, don't forget, look us up on Instagram, I Can't Mom Today Podcast, Facebook, I Can't Mom Today, and Gmail, I Can't Mom Today Podcast @gmail.com.
Thank you. I always forget that. All right. That's why we make a good duo.
That's right.
All right. Have a great day.